Yeah, we've been hearing a lot about AI today. Like practically every session here, I think, has had some discussion around AI. To my great consternation, because I'm like, my questions are all going away. They are getting asked already. But thank you for being here. We have a very eclectic and interesting panel here today. With three authors, but whose work all touches upon artificial intelligence, but in very different ways. So we have Anil Ananthaswamy. He's a science writer, as you heard. His latest book, which is the one we'll be talking about, is called Why Machines Learn: The Elegant Math Behind AI. We have Lavanya Lakshminarayan, who's a science fiction and speculative fiction writer, whose work, of course, takes off a lot from the technologies that we are developing today and is about imagining where those technologies will go in the future. And we have George Mathan, aka Appupen, the beloved graphic novel writer. Wow, rock star, whose latest work, Dream Machine, AI in the Real World, is also kind of a speculative fiction work which takes off from imagining where AI can go and the interaction between AI and humanity. So we'll dive right in. We'll leave about 10 minutes for interaction with the audience, and feel free to ask your questions. So I'll start with George. You've said that Laurent. I mean, you co-wrote this book with an actual AI scientist, an AI entrepreneur, right? And you said that you met him by chance, and you popped the dreaded question: would you like to make a book with me about AI? Why? Well, like, what was compelling about the topic that made you think that this would lend itself to a graphic novel?
No. I was in France doing a residency at the time, and there was nothing working for me like I expected. So it was like a bad time, and I started looking out for like projects I can pick up. And being in this place full of artists, I thought there'd be a lot more about publishing, and no, it was like here it was a bunch of like struggling artists, not knowing like where they're going or what they're doing. So, and they're all really scared of AI. But there was no information about AI. We don't know like why or what exactly, but generally this fear. And I figured that a lot of it is coming from this Hollywood type of image that you have of AI, that we're going to have like artificial general intelligence is going to be as intelligent as humans and things like that. So then I bumped into this scientist guy, okay? Like I was just trying to like make some connections there, and this guy who's an AI scientist, he tells me, straight away I ask him about, my thing is more about resources, which nobody's talking about. And I have this thing which generally is there in my work, this fear that it's a propaganda, and it's a very, I'm from advertising, so I can tell when that spiel is going on. So a lot of the AI information that we had looked like that. So suddenly there's this AI scientist fellow telling me that, oh yeah, resources, it's really bad. Like we might run out of resources looking for AGI. And I found it like very funny, like a comic. Like, as humanity, we are like running to meet this end goal of AI, making it as intelligent. But at the same time, we are running out of resources. But then when I think about it, this is a lot of the narrative from, let's say, the West, for lack of a better thing. But, when they say that we're going to run out of resources, they don't mean that the resources are going to go out from under their feet. It's from another part of the world where the resources are going to go from. So I relate to this, and I thought, okay, this is the kind of narrative about AI which will open up the scene rather than keeping it in like a advertising or propaganda kind of bubble where, over 2 years, for example, like I found that people's perception of AI had changed a lot. Like AI has become a lot more friendly. How is that possible? Because everyone's playing with AI now, and you've got like this very friendly thing you can like tamper with. It's fun for everybody to do. You can get your assignments done on it. If you could, like, we could have this panel also generated by ChatGPT, and so we like to play with it. It's become a friendly thing. But a couple of years back, it was not like that. Another interesting point is like in France, when we marketed the book, we want to say on the cover that there are a lot of things critical of AI. They wanted to say it on the cover. And for me, that's like a giveaway of what the book is. But in France, that is how we sell the book. Whereas in India, we don't want to do that. In India, people are thinking like, okay, AI is going to come and like save the world for us and like give us all the jobs or whatever. I don't know what the logic is, but that way, you know. So it's what he said about the resources that said, okay, I want to like, he's from the industry, and I don't hear that kind of narrative from a lot of my friends who are in IT and working with AI and all in India. There's a sort of like this family thing we do. No, we don't talk about the bad elements of our family kind of thing. That's happening in Bangalore a lot. So I thought, okay, this input is good. And that's how we thought of like doing the book. I wasn't looking for a AI book as such, but this seemed the way to like open up that topic. And he had a lot of like technical things around which I can weave a story and bring in all my dystopia and like warning signals based in science this time. You know, earlier it's just like based in something like I'm eating or drinking.
Actually, that brings me to Anil, if I may, Lavanya, and coming back to you. And so, you know, Anil, you know, what George is talking about, that, you know, the whole perception of AI, it's kind of in these binaries. It's either very good or very bad. So when you wrote your book, which is basically about, you know, the innards of AI, right? Like how AI works, how machine learning comes to be through math. So, you know, you talk, one of the reasons you said that, you know, that you wrote this book is that you want everyone in society who uses AI or interacts with it to understand it better and participate in its evolution, so that it's not just confined to, you know, the AI entrepreneurs and the, you know, the big mega corporations. But, you know, so why do you think this is necessary? Why do you think we need to know what AI is or how it works or how machine learning kind of feeds it?
I think, to be honest, when I started writing the book, the intention was not what I actually wrote in the prologue, which is what you're reading from. When I started writing it, it was because I was very besotted by the math of it. There is something very beautiful and elegant about the mathematics that underlies machine learning. And, you know, we are only, as a society, we are just waking up to it in the last 2 or 3 years. But this effort has been going on since the 1940s, right? And so people have been working on it since then and in various ways. And it's only now that it has come to a point where everybody is getting affected by it. But the field as such has been around for a long, long time. And there's a whole lot of science and math that has gone on that is extraordinary. And part of it is to build artificial intelligence and artificial minds, but the other aspect of it is to understand our own minds. You know, so artificial intelligence was, the effort in part was being made in order to basically understand how human brains work. So it cuts both ways. But as I was writing that book, I started realizing that, you know, again, things started happening in society. People, you know, what you have been talking about, the fear that we face, it became very apparent that if society is going to deal with this technology, which is going to be extremely disruptive, if it already isn't, I mean, you can see the effects of it already. But, I mean, this is nothing compared to what's coming. And I really had the strong feeling that if we are to regulate this technology properly, if we are to use it properly, effectively, without being a disaster, then we can't leave the building of it and the policing of it to only the people who are building it. So we need a whole layer of society that understands what is happening mathematically, because that's where the answers lie in terms of what this technology can do or cannot do. So that was the intention. But it really just began as a project where I was in love with the math.
Lavanya, coming to you, I mean, you're a science fiction writer, you've been a game designer, and, you know, so basically, if I may, you know, your job as a science fiction writer is to see technology as it is today and then kind of extrapolate it into the future and imagine where it may go, right? So when you see the ways that we are interacting with AI today, like how does it match up to your wildest imagination, or, you know, does it prove to be like, is it a building block for what you may imagine AI's future to be? And is that future positive or negative?
I think we're just about beginning to scratch the surface of the possibilities of AI. But where my concern lies, especially when I'm writing about it, kind of goes to what Anil was saying, touches upon what Appupen was saying, right? We have these amazing mathematical models that are powering artificial intelligence. But where my concern lies is with the ethics behind those mathematical models. And, both of your books kind of shedding the light on the math behind it, kind of making it more open source so that more people can access it. I think that's fantastic. And you bringing in your dystopian visions, that's also amazing, because that's where I kind of exist at the confluence of both. I worked as a game designer, I've worked with machine learning, I've built algorithms, all of this in games, right? Which we assume this is light entertainment, ergo harmless. But it is also one of the building blocks of the mathematical models that go into LLMs and AI models. Now, again, we're talking about games, which is where my experience lies. These are being made for sheer entertainment, but at this point, we have so many ethical concerns around AI when it comes to, say, copyrights. The work of artists, musicians, writers being stolen to train these models. We have the question of who's developing these models. Which again, you touched upon, right? Like there's a small group of people building the math, but most of us are left wildly outside of the actual practical implementation of it. And when I extrapolate all of this into the future, which I do in my work when I write about AI, or systems like AI, I fundamentally write about humanity's capacity, or rather, humanity's incapability to ever shake itself free of bias. And I think the amount of bias that we see creeping into AI, of course, we will potentially, given enough time, this technology can correct itself. It can be corrected as it includes perspectives that are more diverse. But the rate of acceleration for this technology is pretty unprecedented. If it's being done for science, then why are we in such a hurry to bring it out to the market? That ties into capitalism, that ties into profitability. All of this is what I write about, and I write about it in the bleakest terms. And where we are today, I feel barely scratches the surface of those very bleak terms, because I think we are not equipped or ready or self-aware enough to handle that kind of power that that technology can unlock. And it is powerful technology that is only getting more and more powerful. So that's kind of where I come from when I imagine where it's going to be in the future.
Right. But why, like, do you necessarily see that future as bleak?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, God. Anil, do you have anything to say to that?
Oh, I'm a pessimist. I think when we were talking about this earlier, I don't think it's AI that's going to kill us. I think we are going to kill ourselves. So there are far bigger problems.
Yeah.
AI is just something that's going to accelerate the process. I don't know if you have been paying attention to what's happening with climate change. I'm not sure AI is even in the mix. If at some point that problem will overtake us well before AI becomes an existential threat to us. So,
Thank
I
you,
was reading
Anil.
about.
Oh, sorry, because I've been wanting to hear that, because now the AI narrative has changed to how it can help you mitigate climate change. You're talking about a scale where, you're running some full capacity AI, which will help you save some of the energy that it is being, save on the consumption from now. But it is after AI has reached that level, and that requires all that resources and all the things that we talked about earlier, and which we're not taking into account. So it's like an advertising slogan, It's being pumped out like that. Very feel-good things, like all the fossil fuel companies will say, towards a better tomorrow, like that. It's at that level.
I'm glad, I'm so sorry. I'm glad that you touched on the advertising front, because when we look at all of these technologies masquerading as being very friendly and everybody tinkering with them, right? All your new OSs on your phones are AI augmented. There's Meta your Instagram has AI. Practically everything has an AI component coming into it. And I think there's an immense branding exercise being carried out by all of the giant corporations, which are not solving for climate change, by the way, right? They're solving for user engagement and kind of making the perception of AI be this very bright, shiny, happy thing that's going to make your life better. But they're not, all this power of technology to change things, that's not where they're coming from. I think they're doing this massive PR exercise and trying to make it look friendly to you and me.
Yes, it's.
But at the same
Would
time,
you agree with that, Anil? Because we were talking about how AI is also involved in, say, R&D for medicine, right? I mean, in healthcare.
look, just like any other technology, this is going to have amazing benefits and really serious issues that we'll have to deal with. The thing with AI is the pace of change and the scale at which it is happening is probably sorry, that's okay. Is probably something that has never happened before. So whether we are capable of adapting to that change in time is still a question mark. The technology is changing very, very rapidly. But saying that, I think AI by itself, to me, is not the problem. I mean, it is us. As long as we don't recognize that, I don't see how we're going to solve this problem. We talk about AI being biased, but we are the people building those things. And so there are so many social problems that are just getting folded into the systems we're building. So I think as a society, we have to ask ourselves what we are doing with ourselves first, fundamentally. AI just becomes another powerful way of achieving either good or bad.
I think it's a good reflection of ourselves because AI is trained on whatever we have only. This intelligence is not intelligent. It doesn't think for itself or anything like we think. My co-author used to say it's a statistical model made to predict the next in the sequence, next unit in the sequence, which is being used. Is it way off the mark?
I mean, yes and no. This is a place where I think this is where kind of getting underneath the skin of AI really starts, becoming important. Because yes, the current large language models are basically trained to, let's say, predict the next word given a sequence of words. But what has been amazing and what has really, really made a lot of academics and researchers wake up and see, just that simple fact, the fact that you train something to predict the next word given a set of words, those AIs have started demonstrating behaviors that they were not specifically trained to do, right? And that generalized behavior that we are seeing in these large language models has been amazing. There's no doubt about that, right? Yes, they make mistakes. Yes, they hallucinate. All the problems are there. But they're also doing, just by training a system to predict the next word, we have something that can translate from German to English to Hindi, and I mean it just across the board. There is nothing in the training procedure that says it should work like that, right? Yet it does. And so there are a lot of unanswered questions about how these systems are actually working internally, and people are struggling to figure out how to mathematically model the internal behavior of these machines. So there's something very profound that has happened in the last 2 years. I wouldn't just dismiss it as saying all they're doing is next word prediction. For all we know, maybe we ourselves are also very, very sophisticated machine learning systems that are predicting the next word.
Yeah, and with all our biases and everything.
Potentially. So we don't know the answers. So maybe the biggest mistake we'll make with AI is to overestimate sort of what the immediate dangers are, but completely underestimate where it's going. So we have to be wary of that.
So Anil, actually I have a question about that. So in what ways do you think human intelligence and artificial intelligence differ? Like we have trained AI models on human intelligence, and like you were saying that, a lot of our understanding of how human intelligence or consciousness works comes from, learning these neural networks do that. So, but what are some of the fundamental ways in which, say, these two differ, and how much does the human conscience and, the ethical part of our brains or morality that we have imbibed play a role in how we learn or how we behave versus a machine which doesn't have ethical considerations or morality or cultural learnings?
I mean, these are huge, huge questions you're asking, right? So, I mean, first of all, current AI, machine learning systems are essentially pattern recognition machines. So they are taught to recognize what patterns exist in data, and based on what they've learned, they're then being asked to make predictions about data that they haven't seen. And all of the sophisticated behavior that we are seeing, including ChatGPT and all of that, is an outcome of something like that, right? They have not yet been endowed with agency, with morality, none of these things. But agentic AI systems are coming. These will be autonomous AI agents, and the moment you have agency, any agent will need certain kind of sort of axes on which it behaves, and some of these things will get baked into the systems. So a lot of these questions will become much more relevant when we have agentic AI. We don't have that yet, so we should not be talking of AI that has any ethics. It has more to do with our ethics in how we use these AI systems.
And also, when you're looking at, forget AI, and let's say it's a chocolate or a bubble gum that I made, and I put it in the hands of a profit-making company. I'm only interested in selling that. So now there seems to be like a race to monopolize this existing level of technology, and whoever gets on top of that mountain is like the king for the time being. And it seemed funny to me that we are acting like we have no agency in this whole thing. This is going, this is how it's going. It's more unpredictable, or we have less control over it than climate change. We are part of it. We are in this thing. We have to do this, or we are going to lose jobs. We are going to have a lot of people falling out of things. But can we rethink it? Do we have to think of it in business terms? Because it's some business's ambition that we are all being part of, right? I mean, it's not really technology that's doing this. Like you said, it's not AI. It's the guy who's behind AI and
Selling AI.
Undercutting even the cheap labor of India to make AI do the work, right?
So as always, we land on capitalism is the problem. Okay, let's admit that. We know where the problem lies, and we don't have a model. We don't have an alternative model, right?
No regulations. Don't it work?
I mean, we have to start thinking about regulations, but my personal feeling is that the horse has bolted, right?
Horse is bolted.
I think so. I think the genie is out of the bottle, whatever metaphor you want to use, because there's so much open source technology that's out there that even if you regulate a few companies, I'm not sure how effective this is going to be. So that's where my pessimism comes. And yeah, I think, but countries will have to get together and figure out how to effectively use the technology.
Wow, so
maybe Lavanya has some sort of
No,
future.
but I have to say, even the guy who loves AI is so pessimistic about AI.
No, so the beauty and elegance of the mathematics, as mathematicians would themselves say, is orthogonal to the question of ethics. Whether something is beautiful or elegant has nothing to do with the ethics of it, or it's so.
Okay, understand that. Yeah.
Something can be very elegant and beautiful and yet be completely
Evil.
unethical in terms of pursuing it. So,
actually, I want to ask Lavanya. Why do you think AI lends itself so well to dystopia? Most of the, depictions of AI that we see are pretty bleak and sort of dystopian. Can you imagine, theoretically, a future with AI as its center, but a more utopian or a more happier future?
It really comes down to what you were saying earlier, Anil, about the axis on which these systems, once they achieve a sense of agency, who determines the moral axis on which that agency is exercised? And at this point, it's a subset of humanity. All of their biases, certain issues of representation, because, we're largely talking about technologies being developed in California, excluding huge chunks of human perspective, native intelligences. We're talking about certain notions of intelligence to begin with constituting AI. So perhaps in a very utopian setting, when every single person who has ever been and is on the planet can influence and frame those set of axes that determine the agency with which, let's assume, a single universal AI mind operates, sure, that would be an optimistic outcome, an optimistic future. But we are leagues beyond that. I mean, even right now, forget AI. AI is one of the, it's at the tip of the iceberg of some very cutting edge technology. Even if you look at extremely basic technologies, if you look at any tech space, tech industry, the people working on the floor are people like us. They're privileged. The people working on the floor are largely men. We are just excluding identities when it comes to developing any kind of technology. So this optimistic version where the moral axis for AI is determined by all of humanity coming together and everybody contributing to it.
Sci-fi.
Absolute sci-fi. I mean, maybe I could write a book about it, but it's going to be, very implausible. And the horse has certainly bolted. I mean, it's really late because there's a difference between for science and for profit. And we are currently well into the for-profit era of AI, which means that, the beauty of the math, which is absolutely beautiful because I've worked with those machine learning models. It's lovely. That exists, but it is all being tuned towards, a certain set of goals targeted towards a certain set of people as opposed to being science itself, being experimented with. And that's my concern.
And in general, science is not removed from, it's not happening in the vacuum by itself. So it's not just AI. All of science is very closely linked with all the other motives that are driving humanity. So science is just a sliver of that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the accelerated pace, I think, that we touched upon, where we haven't had the chance to look at all the gray areas and all of the loopholes and think of how we're going to augment or address those before it suddenly becomes this mass market product that everybody can access and use. And I think that rate of acceleration is what concerns me.
And it seems to be like serving everyone's agenda because okay, the businesses want to do like their database and things like that. When we looked at AI in terms of like there's a lot of like positive uses which we've highlighted in the book. I'm not like being this AI like naysayer or anything, but it's very effective for surveillance, control, and bringing like data to connect like your behavior, your patterns, and all that, and predict things like that. It's going to be a lot more effective than what we already see, where if we talk about something, we get an ad. But this is like level we cannot imagine right now kind of thing. So it seemed like, it is serving the government's agenda also in some ways to like put this all, they're not really interested in regulations first. Everyone seems to be running to like make their buck before the regulations which won't ever come. So, we are playing in that gap sometimes, I feel. Like before regulations come, like even for AI generated art and stuff, a lot of businesses are making like using AI art because we don't have like any regulation on it or a clear idea about copyright of it. So people are straight, businesses moved in already, and a lot of artists are losing their thing. But this artists losing thing is like this new narrative, which I am also suspicious of because there are actually so many other people losing their things. Now artists are losing has become like this thing, which I think is a little too much, but yeah.
I think, it's the artist losing the thing is the visible story that we're hearing. But in terms of, what it's going to enable a lot of people to do in, with shortcuts and making a whole section of jobs redundant, all of those things, the current digital disparity that exists, it's only going to widen because eventually AI is going to be accessible to people like us. It's not going to proliferate much beyond this little privileged tent we're sitting in. And that is a problem because artists and writers losing their jobs because entire, I think the staffs of so many magazines and newspapers and online journals, they've all been laid off because AI is writing those articles. But that's the headline. Beneath that is going to be a lot fewer jobs for people who don't have access to that smartphone that's going to enable them to tap into AI, to future-proof them in order to be able to use AI at some point in the future. And that's,
Yep.
yeah.
We'll just throw it open to questions. I have just one small question for Anil. See, these people are so anxious about AI. Do you share this anxiety? Where do you think this anxiety stems from, and is it justified?
What anxiety?
No, you are not anxious?
What anxiety?
Okay, okay.
Anxiety about AI, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, look, if you just look at the state of the world right now, take AI out of the picture, you should be anxious anyway. So I don't see what, everything is kind of
Yeah, up in the air, right?
So
It's just one more thing.
I feel like AI just adds another, ingredient to that mix, a more powerful ingredient, potentially more disruptive. But am I anxious? Yes, very much. But not just because of AI.
Yeah, like we were discussing earlier, like, we are having all these academic discussions, and for all you know, climate change is going to kill all of us in the next 50 years. I mean,
I don't know all of us, but a whole bunch of us, sadly. No, it's true. I think climate change is the real clear and present danger. And yeah, AI to me, there are ways in which AI is going to be deployed, and it's already being deployed, that has more to do with things like bias in AI and bias in the data that we use to train. All those things are sort of the low-hanging fruit of problems in AI. The real doomsday scenarios that people talk about with AI are far away. They may not happen because something else might happen well before that. So,
I think using all the resources for getting the AI there will up the climate change thing, and that can be like a plausible ending. What do you think? Like climate change takes over, but like thanks to AI.
I think they're planning their new science fiction book.
We need to collaborate on this.
collaboration.
Yeah, but I felt like because nobody talks openly about the energy consumption.
No, I
We
disagree.
were
I think people do talk about it.
Okay.
There's
It's not in the mainstream.
plenty of discussion. I think probably in India not as much, but certainly in California.
Oh, yeah.
They are the ones consuming the energy, so they are talking about it. Journalists worldwide are writing about it. So it's not like nobody knows about this. And there are also, from the scientific perspective, efforts to make sure that the machine learning models are more energy efficient. Our brains are a great example of how intelligence can be very efficient, and machine learning models are nowhere close to that.
I think we have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions. Yes, please do pass the mic around. There are lots of hands at the back.
Come on, more hands in the front, please.
That is just being so like, you're just
Just
enabling privilege.
Working the audience, Like,
Pick someone, no?
nobody's going to ask anything.
Yeah, can somebody take a mic there? Okay, come up in front and ask. I'll hand you the mic.
Yeah, hello. So this is a question to you about AI and consciousness, technically. So do you take a reductionist view for consciousness that, like, let's say, like whole can be explained by parts and consciousness is computable, which means like technically we'll be able to implement it in another substrate, like silicon substrate in machine learning models? Or do you think there is something special about consciousness that will never replicate in a computational system? What do you think?
If you had asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said, I don't know. Not that I know now, but I am much more convinced that there is nothing special about consciousness. And if that view, which is a materialist, reductionist view, if that bears out, if that is correct, then machine consciousness is a given, because there is nothing particularly keeping it from getting there. But empirical evidence is still lacking, so I think you have to be careful about taking that reductionist perspective. I have come to that perspective only because of all the various things that I've come across now in my writing and in the things that I've studied. I'm fairly convinced that machines will be conscious, and they will claim to be conscious, just like you and I are claiming to be conscious. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think there were some questions there. Yes, go ahead.
So we're at a literature fair, so I think it's fair to talk about the arts. As a rule, arts always inspire different arts. Like a song you listen to right now, it's probably inspired by other musicians. And AI studies based on these other artists. They study based on literature and music of the past. And so do artists nowadays. So don't you think that now that they're at a same playing field with the work that they've seen before, don't you think that's completely jeopardizing the future for all art in these industries, whether that's music, literature, or fine arts?
Who are you asking the question to? Like, who do you want?
Just generally, I think.
Okay.
I mean.
Short answer, yes. I think that it's extra problematic because the machine itself at this point is not concerned with making that art. It is humans using the machine to learn for them and make that art for them. And that is a problem because if you look at all of us here, we have spent years honing our craft, honing how we want to express ourselves, arriving at a unique identity. And at this point, there are several tech bros capitalizing on offering services that will let you write a novel overnight, let you become an art prodigy overnight. And yes, that is absolutely problematic if we don't put measures into that. And it is extra problematic because all of this is being done, training these models on art, on IP that is owned by original creators. So absolutely, completely problematic.
I have a question very similar to what she asked. Today, I can feed a foundation model with all the novels of my writers, scripts of my favorite writers and all. Adding to that, I can feed it my personal opinions, like keep adding my journals and everything. It might produce a work, but that is very similar to how an individual operates, right? Even if I write a story tomorrow, I'll take inspiration from my writers, I'll take inspiration from my experiences. That's how I produce a work. That's very similar to how an individual does, right?
Yeah, in advertising, it was like that. Whenever we get a brief, we say we want to get inspiration, and we get all these award-winning books, and we open it, and we look through it, and we get inspiration. And we try to make it exactly like that. It works in advertising or for commercial things like it can. But in terms of art, in terms of telling new stories, there are lines that are blurred here. So I think that's what we're trying. Because AI is only promising like faster and cheaper stuff, churning out things. So I guess that works for a market that is looking for that. For me, when I'm sitting and making a comic or story, making the story is the most thrilling part. So far I haven't got much thrill from selling it also. So, if you're taking that most enjoyable part out of it, what's the story? I don't think an artist would want to do that or a writer would want to do that. It's when you want to deliver assignments or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Anil, the question is for you. In the book, you interview both Hopfield as well as, I think you talk about Hinton. And at that point in time, the Nobel Prize wasn't awarded to both of them. So what was your experience talking to them? And especially Hinton has now kind of become a little bit more wary of what all of you are talking about, saying we need to be much more careful about AI. So what was your experience there?
I think for me as a journalist, talking to some of the people who worked on these, the fundamentals of machine learning, that was really amazing, including Hinton and Hopfield. Hopfield was 84 when I talked to him. And last week when I saw him walk over to the podium to collect his Nobel, he was, much older, but yeah, just amazing. Saying that, it's been interesting to watch Hinton's change of, when I talked to him, there was no inclination of him being worried about the consequences of what's happening. And I did ask him later why the change of heart. And some of it is really because what we just said earlier, that most people in the field were surprised by the capabilities of large language models. Because if you just look at the mathematics of how they are trained, there is nothing in their training regimen, the way the models are trained, that suggests properties that they are displaying. And I think people like Hinton got taken aback by how powerful they were. And I guess they started thinking more deeply about how and where this is going, and they are sounding the alarm. I'm not sure how much credence to give to these doomsday scenarios, because you can also find counter arguments amongst the experts. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but for me as a journalist, just interacting with some of these people, I mean, there are people I talked to who had done their work in the 1950s and early 60s, right, who are now in their 90s. And all of that, just following the history of the field, was really amazing.
I think we have to wind up here. We just have like 40 seconds left. And the authors are all available. They'll head for the signing. So buy their books, get them signed, have all the discussions about AI. And let's just hope that this Lit Fest and we are not replaced by some AI models in the future. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.